Let's look at guided reflection, which is a very specific form of reflective practice. Johns developed this concept in 1994. It involves the teacher engaging with a series of key questions which help them explore and consider and reconsider the experiences that they're having, their motivations for what they're doing in the classroom. These can be designed by the teacher, but they can actually be designed by another teacher or the school or even an educational authority. In terms of the methods which can be used, for example, there can be a reflective diary. A good way to do this is to have an open book, 2 pages. One side is the descriptive part of the reflection, saying what happened. More critical, reflective component, why, and what were the considerations that developed those instances. Morn and Webb consider a number of key questions which can help to guide reflection. For example, they say that the teacher can ask what is most important or interesting or useful or relevant about what they did or something that they used, a resource that they used. They sort of ask the question, how can it be explained, with theory or just through experience? They offer the question, how is it similar to or different from other experiences that the teacher has had, to make connections between their teaching. The teacher can ask, what have I learned from this? And what does this mean for my future teaching? This is where the teacher is engaging as a learner in the teaching process. Biggs and Tang also offer some questions for reflection. They ask questions like, what was the problem? Again, a very practical, technical type of question to ask. What went wrong? What's the evidence of that problem? What were the causes of that particular problem? And how did the teacher deal with the problem? Very practical considerations. They ask a question, how did the solution to the problem relate to theory that the teacher understands? This is helping the teacher make connections between theory and practice. Perhaps the most significant form of guided reflection would be to use Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy provides a framework where the teacher can ask questions of themselves and of their teaching, from lower order thinking through to higher order thinking. First, let's try to reflect Bloom's taxonomy in relation to a taxonomy of reflection. In terms of lower order thinking, we can think of the teacher just remembering, describing, what did I do? And this goes through to understanding what was important about what I did. Beyond this, we move into middle order thinking, applying and analysing. Where could I use this again, this particular technique? How can it be applied elsewhere? And analysing, did I see any patterns which I need to be aware of? Were there any considerations? And then through to higher order thinking, evaluating, how well did I do? And then also creating, how can I use all this information next time? What can I do in the future? Bloom's level of remembering, or in other words, what did I do? The teacher can reflect by asking such questions as, what was the lesson? Did it address all the content? Was it completed on time? These are, again, very practical, easy questions to ask, but they're an important starting point for the reflective practitioner. Bloom's understanding level, what was important about what I did, or did it meet my goals, can be reflected on by the teacher in terms of, can I explain the major components of the lesson, and do I understand how they connect one to the other? Where does this fit into the curriculum is another question which links into that level of Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's application level, which is in relation to questions like, when did I do this before, can be reflected on by the teacher in terms of questions like, did I build on content and processes which I've taught in previous lessons? This would underpin students' learning. How does this lesson scaffold the learning for the next lesson? How does it provide a foundation for what is to come? How could I adapt the approach I used, the instruction that I used for another lesson, for a different lesson? How could this lesson be modified? Again, this is a level of reflection which is in the middle of Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's analysis level. This is now getting into higher order thinking. Bloom's analysis, do I see any patterns or relationships? This, in terms of the reflective practitioner, is very much focused on questions like, well, what background knowledge and what skills do I need in order to teach a particular lesson effectively? And were the instructional strategies right for that lesson? Were they effective? Do I see any patterns recurring in my teaching which I need to consider? Are they good patterns or are they destructive patterns? And do I see patterns in the style, the approach that I have? Do students react to me when I teach in a particular way? And do I need to consider how that is affecting their learning? And then Bloom's evaluation level. How well did I do? What worked? What do I need to improve? These get to be translated in terms of teacher reflection to questions like, did some aspects of what I did need improvement? Could they be better? Were the needs of the individual learners met in the lesson? And what levels of mastery of a good quality learning took place for the students? What have I learned about my own strengths and my own weaknesses, my own areas for improvement? That, again, is a good level of analysis. And how am I progressing as a teacher? Am I developing myself? Teacher reflection can further take on aspects around the incorporation of lessons for the future. What can you do in the future in relation to what you learned from this? What changes would you make? And what would you keep the same? How can you best use your strengths in the future? And what steps should you take in terms of using resources or applying new resources to challenge students' learning? Teacher reflection is the training that would help me to meet my future intentions. The teacher needs to look beyond what's happening in the classroom in terms of how to develop themselves as professionals. And they need to think about their role developing over time.